Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 212, recorded live on Monday, August 25th, 2014. I'm your host, and once again snubbed at the Emmys for the best SharePoint Netcast recorded in Iowa, in Story County, in my basement. But I have a good feeling about next year. I think next year is going to be really good. Next year is going to be my year. But I'm your host and recent Emmy snub, Todd Klindt. And before we get this whole, train wrecking and all those euphemisms for things going poorly, before we get that all started, first I want to give a shout out to my folks at Rackspace. Hey, Rackers, how's it going? We do a lot of great stuff at Rackspace, and one of the things that we do great at Rackspace is SharePoint. And you can go out to sharepoint.rackspace.com and find out all about it and all the great products we have around SharePoint at Rackspace. That's sharepoint.rackspace.com. Now on to the production notes. As you have already noticed, if you've downloaded the video, you've already noticed that it's crappy for the third week in a row. And if you count the week that was Shane on video, that's just crappy video. No matter how you record it, that's 4 weeks in a row. I've been having a bunch of video problems, and so once again, I've resorted to using the archived copy from Ustream. So when Ustream, when I broadcast live, there's an option to record it, and then I can download it later as a flash video, and it's kind of crappy quality, which honestly, that probably works in my favor. I'm not getting any younger. I'm not getting any better looking, and so it's probably works in my favor. But what has been happening for the last month now is the software that I use normally to record, it crashes in the middle of the recording, the middle of the netcast. And so a couple times I've started over and it's crashed again. And so I've just given up. Can't get it to get it to work. So the software that I used to use and maybe not will ever again was just the software that came with my Logitech webcam. And it was just the Logitech stuff, and it's just not working very well. And so for those of you that haven't suffered through my explanation on how this works before, I actually do this in front of two webcams. One is the one that we're looking at now. That is a Logitech webcam that goes to the streaming software. And then I've got another deadbeat webcam over here that's just doing nothing but causing me angst. And that one is the one that goes to the recording software. So normally I have two different video streams going. But for the last 3 weeks, including tonight, or the last 4 weeks, the software that does the recording part has been crashing in the middle of the recording. And it did it right before I came online. I tried to do something else, and that didn't work either. So this machine apparently needs to be burnt to the ground, reinstalled. It's running Windows 7, which feels kind of archaic now, so I'll probably rebuild it onto an SSD, Windows 8, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully by next week, we will have fewer problems. Half as many problems, maybe. So, still more than I can handle, but probably half. And really what caused all this was a few months ago, I was watching a podcast on podcasting, and I saw the guy had a Logitech camera like the one that I was using, a C910 or something like that, but it had a tripod mount on it. And so the camera that I usually use is this little devil right here. And then there was a new version that came out that had a tripod mount on it. And so I went out, ran right over to Amazon and bought one of those because I do mount this thing on a tripod once in a while, especially when I travel. I'm like, that would be great, because normally I use a Windows Live Cam for that because it's got a tripod mount. But the firmware on that's just a little different, and it records things just a little different. And I had to download a new version of the software, and that's when when the wheels came off the bus and everything unraveled, was when I bought that little pain in the butt right there. So I blame it all on that camera. I'm going to go outside and dump water on it later. I'm going to say it's for charity, but really it's just going to be because I'm mad. But I apologize for the video. I know a few of you download the video, and I apologize for not being any good. So hopefully next week we'll have something better to note on that. All right. So now we'll go on to the topic. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was all the rage on the internet. Now, you guys know me. I am a trendy, happening guy. And when there are things abuzz on the internet, I am all over it. And this week is no different. So earlier, well, last week, some point, I can't remember which day it was, a Canadian who shall remain nameless. Oh, hell, it was Sean Walbridge. Nobody likes Sean Walbridge is kind of the theme for this thing. But Sean Walbridge called me out for the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, for goodness sakes, I have no idea how you've escaped all that. But it's this thing that's been going across the internet, spreading like wildfire, ironically, because it's all about water. But people have been growing awareness about ALS research funding by dumping ice water on themselves and then challenging 3 other people to do it within 24 hours. And Sean Walbridge, because he's a terrible, terrible person, challenged me last week, and so I did it, and the video is out there right now. It's on YouTube. It's actually in my Netcast channel, so if you're a subscriber to my Netcast, you can see it in there. I put it in there, but it's out there on YouTube. You can see it in all its glory. And I called out Lori Gowan, who's in the chat room, Shane Young, and then another friend of mine, Jason Sylvia, to do all that. And the rules vary depending on who you talk to. In all honesty, the big thing is awareness. So the ALS chapter that's been getting all these, it's www.alsa.org. I think those folks said that they raised like $2 million last year, or $2 million over some period of time last year. And this year they've raised $80 million. So a mere 40 times more because of this ice bucket challenge thing that's that's going all over the internet. So it's a good thing. And as always, there's a bunch of haters. People are like, oh, you can donate money without dumping water on your head. And, well, I'm not going to donate money to ALS. That's not the important part. The important part is that people are donating more money, clearly. And that's what it's good. Now, I don't have anybody personally that I know of that's had ALS, or also called Lou Gehrig's disease. The closest that I have is a musician that I like, who was a guitar player, played for David Lee Roth and some other stuff, a guy named Jason Becker. He was diagnosed with ALS at the age of 19. And what's particularly sad about this was he was a great guitar player, very disciplined, practiced. You don't get to be that good without practicing a lot. And was in a couple of bands, did really well, but he was really on the breaking point of his career. He had gotten signed by David Lee Roth after David Lee Roth left Van Halen, and he had just recorded an album with David Lee Roth and was getting ready to go on tour when all this happened. And then he found out he had ALS. So it was kind of at the beginning of his career, and it all got cut short. Now, the funny thing was, he found out about this in 1989. He was diagnosed in 1989, and they told him he had 3 to 5 years to live. And he's alive today. He's still alive 25 years later. So without getting into a lot of details, there are a couple of different kinds of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. So Stephen Hawking has the same kind. He's had ALS for 30-some years now. And so there's a kind that kills you quickly and a kind that doesn't. And if Jason Becker has a video out called Not Dead Yet, which is all about his struggle, and they explain the different types of ALS in that video. But that's as close as I've had to it. But it's really not about that. It's just about helping people out and getting in the habit of being charitable. So the folks that I've challenged, they've done a pretty good job standing up to that and challenging other people. Some other folks have gotten challenged from that. Now, the rules, again, have been kind of all over, but the idea is if you get challenged and you don't want to dump ice water on your head, you send ALSA a check for $100. Or you can dump ice water on your head, and some people don't send any money, some people send some money anyway. I did the latter. I'm going to send them money anyway. And then you challenge other people. So again, it's all about helping people out, being charitable, feeling good. And so I did it. I did it with pleasure, even though I don't like Sean Walbridge very much. Like him even less now. But I'll do that. So by all means, go out there, have a good time. If it's not your thing, that's cool. But don't be afraid of it. It can be a fun time, and it's a great bonding thing. It's a great way to to call other people out too. But Lori and I, because I challenged Lori, so we were discussing all this, kind of got her gears moving about my annual birthday drive, my charity birthday drive. Now, normally, her and Dan Usher have kind of been the people who have ran that in the past few years, and that's something that I'm a part of, but I've never wanted to like do myself, because it felt better if it was a grassroots thing. It felt better if you hooligans out there did it, and so I've helped those guys do that. But Lori, in the spirit of this, she did her ALS challenge. She challenged some folks. One of the guys she challenged was Eric Harlan. I don't know if he's stepped up yet or not. He's in the chat room now, so if he hasn't stepped up, y'all in the chat room give him some grief about that. But it kind of got her thinking that we should try to do something big for my birthday charity drive this year. Now, again, my birthday is in January, so we got a good 5 months, but she's got some ideas about that. So it's not all been finalized yet. We're kind of kicking some ideas around. She's got some great ideas, by the way. But if you are interested in either helping out with that, so helping Lori coordinate things and design things, or if you want to just donate or whatever, time, money, whatever, go ahead and email Lori, and her email address is gowinl@bellsouth.net. That's GOWINL @bellsouth.net, and she'll get in touch with you and figure something out. So she's got some lofty goals this year. We talked a little bit about it earlier today, but I think she can do it. And again, this is a huge honor, and I'll be glad if that works out. But that's always been a good time. Love to be part of that. All right, so on to some SharePoint stuff. This was a great article that came out today. I was very excited to see this. And Trevor Seward did it. I don't see him in the chat room tonight. He's often in the chat room. But so he published a article today called The Expensive App Pools. And this is something that we've all known for a while, and certainly something that I preached for a while. But Trevor actually put pen to paper, ran some tests, had some graphs. Who doesn't love graphs? And they're very colorful, and screenshots and all that kind of stuff. It's all very good stuff. And so I like to talk about that. So basically, what he was talking about, and the other thing is, I get email from folks. You can email me, todd.klindt@rackspace.com. Hit me up on Twitter @ToddKlindt. Whatever, you can get me. And one of my viewers did that. Mary Larson emailed me a while back and had some questions, things like that. But one of them was about app pools, web app pools. And so I told her my regular line about, all your web apps should be in the same app pool, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And so this blog post of Trevor's was very fortuitous because, for one thing, he agreed with all the things that I said, which always makes me feel good. But then another thing is that it kind of puts pictures and stuff like that to it. So basically, the crux of Trevor's blog post is that you should have all of your web apps in a single app pool because it is more efficient. It uses less RAM. And he sets things up. He's got multiple web apps. Some are in their own app pool in IIS, and a couple are in the same app pool in IIS. And so he does an IIS reset. So all of the worker processes go away, and the worker processes show up in Task Manager as w3wp.exe. That's the World Wide Web worker process.exe. Does an IIS reset, they all flush, and then he just hits the front page of each of the web apps. And each of the web apps, the front page is just a team site, so pretty lightweight site. And we'll talk about that in a second, why that matters. But he just hits the front page of each one, and each app pool, as it fires up, takes between 350 and 400 megs of RAM. And then his last web app shares an app pool with the previous web app, and when it fires up, it only adds another 60 meg. So, an eighth or so, a seventh of the space. And so now you're probably looking at me and you're thinking, well, my front end web server has 12 gig of RAM or something crazy like that. So saving, 300 meg of RAM here and there doesn't really matter a lot. But he did it to prove a point, and and the point is that when you create these, these separate app pools, they are, their own memory space, and that app pool will compile and cache all the things that it needs to render out web apps of a certain type of template, webs of a certain type of template. So, for instance, in his example, he used all team sites, so those are all the same DLL and the same code, and any other team sites inside of those web apps will come up quickly because all that stuff's in there. But then if you use a publishing site, that's more stuff inside of there. If you use, blogs or wikis or anything, every kind of web template that you use adds a little more bulk to that app pool. And there are other pieces of shared code that get compiled into there. So your difference isn't going to be 300 or 400 meg of RAM per web app. Once your site gets going and people start hitting it and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be gigs of RAM. So you get that benefit. The other benefit is that Trevor I don't think, touched on this much in his blog post, but when he hit web app A, it took, we'll say, 30 seconds to warm up. And then he hit web app B, which is the same kind of site, and since it was in its own app pool, it took 30 seconds to warm up. And then web app C, so on and so forth. But when he added the last hit the last web app, since it was using the same stuff that had already been pre-cached in that app pool, it came up more quickly. So it's that whole, whoever hits SharePoint first thing in the morning, it's slow. You can reduce that slowness by having fewer app pools. So my guidance has always been that all of your web apps should be in the same app pool unless there's a compelling reason not to. Unless you can explain to me in 30 words or fewer why they need to be separate, then they should be in the same app pool. And the great deal is if you screw up one way or the other, you can always change it. If you put them all in one app pool and you actually need to separate one out, you can do that after the fact. It's not a big deal. So if you do want to have them in separate app pools, there's two reasons that I talk about that I think are okay. One is process isolation, and one is account isolation. So process isolation is a good one because I get to crack on my friends, the developers. So if you're using full trust code or something that's running inside of the web app, if it's running poorly, then it's going to affect all of the web apps that are in that same app pool. Now, back in the good old days of like SharePoint 2007, SharePoint 2003, you could actually run an app pool out of RAM, get up there like 1.4, 1.6 gig of RAM. Everything was 32-bit back then. It ran on Steam. Mules actually powered SharePoint. Back in those days, if you had bad code in there, if you had memory leaks, you could actually take all of SharePoint down, and all of the web apps in that app pool would fall from that. These days, that doesn't happen quite as much, but if you get bad code that's going to be running, or custom code even, bad or otherwise, because I assume all code is bad. If you want to reduce the amount of damage that code can do inside of SharePoint, you'll put web apps that use that custom code in their own app pool or app pools. And then when that custom code goes crazy and tries to take SharePoint down, it can only take that one worker process down. So that's process isolation. If you want to isolate a bad process, you can put it in its own app pool. The other reason is account isolation. So this app pool runs as an account, as an identity, and when I set up farms, it's usually SP_web app, and that is the account that process runs as. And that is the account that has permission to all of the content databases that are associated with that web app, so on and so forth. So you might find yourself in a position where you need some very high security things, like if you've got a database that's got my social security number in it, for goodness sakes, treat that thing like it's the most precious thing on the planet. But you may need your web apps to run as different accounts because one web app's databases can't be accessible from the other web app pools. I've seen like HR databases, things like that happen that way. So if you need to isolate accounts, that is another way, because obviously if you've got two web apps running in the same app pool, they can't be using separate accounts. That's just against the laws of physics. That's just not possible. So that might be the other reason that you do that, is for account isolation. But again, unless you can sit down and scribble out why you need them to be separate, all of your web apps should be in the same app pool. Also, there is a limit of the number of app pools, I believe, that SharePoint 2013 and 2010 support. So you gotta be careful not run afoul of that. And also, it's kind of tangential, but the same philosophy applies to service apps. All of your service apps should be in the same service app pool, unless there's a reason not to. Same reasons, custom code, that kind of stuff, process isolation or account isolation. And that I've absolutely seen that, because you got to think, you got a lot of service apps. You're going to have way more service apps than you have web apps in most cases. So we definitely have had a couple of customers who had 10 or 12 service apps all in their own app pool. And so this, you pull up Task Manager and there's just W3, WP processes as far as the eye can see. And everything's slow and clunky and just nothing can talk. And as we started rolling those back into one big service app pool, things sped up considerably. So that's also a good solution. And also, if you've done that wrong, you can easily collapse all of your service apps into one app pool. So Jeff Jones is in the chat room, and he wanted me to give a plug for a CodePlex project that he has. He's a very humble man, that Jeff Jones. And if you go to spbestwarmup.codeplex.com, he's got a thing for that. And he is at spjeff on Twitter. I also have a blog post on using PowerShell to warm up your app pools. If I were more prepared, I would have had that URL handy. But you can use the invoke web request command in PowerShell to loop through your web apps and hit the front page and warm things up. But good stuff there. Thanks to Trevor for that blog post. One of those great ones after it came out today. I'm like, oh man, I wish I'd have written that. That's a brilliant blog post. But see, Mary, I didn't lead you wrong. Trevor agrees with me. The chat room agrees with me. Everybody agrees, except for the couple of customers that we're all making fun of, that the fewer app pools is better. Now, I thought that was some pretty good news, seeing that Trevor agreed with me. But there was actually better news in the SharePoint world this last week. I would try to do something to bring up some anticipation, but I just can't do it. I'm so darn excited that I can't even play anymore. The ULS Viewer is back from the dead. It is back. Can I get an amen? Can I get a hallelujah? Microsoft's ULS Viewer is back. This showed up on Bill Baer's blog a couple of days ago, and that's at, he's got a really gnarly URL for his blog. I forget what it is. It's blogs.technet.com/b/wbaer/clickbang/ anyway, it's got like hieroglyphics and stuff in it. But anyway, the best tool in the world for viewing SharePoint ULS logs was the MSDN ULS Viewer. And it was a project out in CodePlex, but it timed out. It was stale for like 3 or 4 years or something like that, and it went away. You couldn't download it anymore. It was gone. So I had archived a copy and had that local, but man, I felt like I needed to put it in a jar or something. Because, if I had deleted like the last copy, it would be like a bird going extinct or something. It would have been horrible. But we wept and we cried and we emailed folks and finally Microsoft listened. And I can only imagine that this is all because of Satya Nadella. I can only assume that if Ballmer were still in charge, he would have denied us this tool. That's just the kind of guy that he is. But anyway, Satya's back. He's got our back, and he took care of this. Or else maybe it was just Bill. For all we know, Bill stays up at night and codes this. But the ULS Viewer is back. You can go to my blog. You can go to toddklindt.com/ULS Viewer, and that will take you to my blog post. It has a link to the download link. And it's a big deal that it's back. Now, as I talk about in my blog post, it has the same charm and panache as the old version did. It's obviously the same code and all that. They fixed a few bugs and added a few things, but But it's the same kind of thing. So if you used the old one before, you already know how to jump right back into this one. They did add a couple of things, and it's only been out for a couple of days, so I haven't played with it a lot. But one of the things they did was added the ability to monitor multiple servers more easily. You could always monitor multiple servers in the ULS log viewer. You could open up multiple tabs, point them at multiple directories. That has always been there. But what they added was like a dialog box, and you can put your server names in there and it will all open them up. And so that's kind of handy. Now, one of the things I never talked about before was the ULS Viewer had some command line parameters, some command line switches that you could throw. And some of the things they talk about with this new one are things that you can do with that. So if you're curious about them, in whatever directory you've got the ULS log viewer downloaded, do ULS Viewer space --, and you'll see the command line parameters that you've got. But there's a couple of cool things out there. One of them is you can jump to a specific point inside of your file. So if you know exactly what time something happened, you can use the -file at parameter to say, open up this file at this time, and it will take you right to the time that your error was. So if you reproduce something, you know that it happened at 9:06 or something, you can jump right there. So that's kind of handy. Also, there is a -combine parameter, and that parameter will open up multiple files inside of the same tab, which is kind of nice. So if you've got files from multiple servers in your farm and you've not used merge splog file to combine them all into one file, you can use -combine with ULS log viewer, and it will suck them all into one pane, and then you can filter and sort and all the format and all those kind of crazy things. Brian LaLancette, the godfather of the AutoSP installer, noticed a new bug in this version. The -ULS RT switch doesn't seem to work, and the -ULS RT switch would open up the ULS viewer into the live view of your log files, which is the thing that we all did. We all opened up the ULS viewer and did file open from ULS, or I did Control U, and that opened them up. Read the registry, saw where the files were, and opened them up that way. There's a switch that used to do that, -ULS RT. Right now, that switch just gives you a dialog box that says invalid directory. Not very helpful. Now, when I saw this, Brian mentioned it on Twitter, so I went out to immediately try to reproduce it, hoping that I could see that Brian was all wrong. I could rub his nose in it and stuff, but turns out Brian was right again. But I cracked out Process Monitor, which is a great tool. We'll talk about that in a minute. To see what was going on, and I couldn't even see where the ULS viewer was trying to read that value as to where the directory was, nor could I see it trying to access a directory and failing. So I think there's something wonky with that. But a couple of things, if you read through both Bill's blog post and the --? Stuff and the Process Monitor stuff, is the ULS viewer does look for some default files, view files and filter files and stuff like that. So there's some crazy stuff in there that I just never taken the time to look at. But anyway, I submitted that bug to Bill, both Brian and I, screenshots and all that kind of stuff. He promises it will be fixed. He also threatened, so we sent that to him and he said, oh gosh, it's got a bug. Maybe I should take it down and let it be gone for a year or so again. That's not really what we were going for, Bill. But anyway, go out there, hit that blog post, give Bill lots of love. Bill's also on Twitter, and I think he is at William Bear, and that's BAER. At William Bear. So do me a favor, go out there and tweet at William Bear and tell him how happy you are to see the ULS viewer back on the streets. Talking about Process Monitor. Process Monitor is one of those free sysinternals tools that Microsoft got when they bought sysinternals. They got Mark Rusinovich and Process Monitor. But what Process Monitor does is monitor what's going on with your system and will tell you what programs are accessing directories and things like that. And so what that did is I fired up Process Monitor, fired up the ULS viewer with the -ULS RT switch, and then filtered by the ULS viewer.exe process, and I could see every registry key it was trying to read, every file it was trying to read, all that kind of stuff. And so that's how I could tell what it was trying to do. So great tool. If you're ever having weird problems, Process Monitor is a great tool. It's free. Just go out to Bing, Process Monitor, all that. Brian asked for a shameless plug for his companion script to the ULS viewer to auto-populate farm servers and log locations and stuff like that. I'll put that URL in the show notes because it's kind of long. But if you go to spinsiders.com/Brian Lala, that's his blog, and it's going to be from August 25th. It's called Pre-Populating SharePoint Farm Details for ULS Viewer. Again, it'll be links in the show notes. I might put it in the lower third, but it's really long, so it might not fit. But go out there and give Brian lots of downloads for that. He'll appreciate that. And finally, we got two more things left. So we all talked a couple of weeks ago about the fun and frivolity that came out with the August updates for both SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013. A recap for those of you who were on vacation or whatever, which was a great thing to have been doing that week. We're used to getting one or two big one or two big exe files with our cumulative updates that just patch everything. And in August, that didn't happen. Instead, we got 5 files for SharePoint 2013, and it was not quite as bad for 2010, but it was just, instead of having one nice big package to install and just being done, we had all these little packages, and it was very scary and disorienting and all that. And so I talked to some folks at Microsoft and was getting ready to publish a blog post on this. And Stefan Gossner beat me to it. Stefan Gossner is a guy that works at Microsoft. He's one of their support guys, and he's just a wealth of great information about patching and all that kind of stuff. And he published a blog post on August 19th called SharePoint Patching Demystified, and basically explained why the August updates turned out the way they are, and then just tried to explain a little bit better about what happened. So first let's talk about what happened in August. Microsoft's intention was for the August patches to look like all the patches that came before it, but they're trying to hit this monthly cadence. And I think specifically they're trying to hit the Patch Tuesday monthly cadence. And they found out fairly late in that patch cycle that something with that August patch was broken. And instead of delaying the patch to fix whatever was broken, they just released the pieces that were not broken. But that ended up breaking the installer, things like that. So that is why that happened. Their intention was not to keep doing that. And hopefully going forward, if everything works out well, patches will go back to looking the way we expect them to. But their mission was to get that to get that patch out on Patch Tuesday, so whatever it took, they released what they could. So that makes me feel a little better that we don't have this to look forward to, this crazy hodgepodge of patching. But then Stefan goes on inside of his blog post to explain kind of what went on, why they're cumulative. I had a blog post that said that the August cumulative update was not cumulative, and Stefan didn't call me out specifically. He may not even know. Well, I guess we chatted on Twitter. I was going to say he may not even know I exist, but he countered that they are cumulative, and I kind of see what he was saying. So when I said that they were not cumulative, I was speaking about the entire product. So if you install the August patches for 2010 or 2013, they don't contain all of the patches and all of the previous cumulative updates. For instance, July, you have to install the July patch if you want everything. So therefore, in my mind, it was not cumulative. But, and that's in the scope of the product. Stefan defined cumulative a little differently, though not unrealistically. His retort to that was the patches for the components are cumulative. So the patch for search I guess I don't remember if search is one of them that got patched this month or not. I should check there. But SharePoint Foundation, for instance, is one of the things that's patched in the August patches. And if you install the August Foundation patch, it is cumulative for the Foundation component. And if you go into Central Admin, you can look and see all the different components in SharePoint. You can see they've all got different build numbers, things like that. His argument was that for each component, for every line item in that list, the August patch is cumulative for everything. But since there's not a big, installer, that's where I was saying. So we came at it from different angles. But it was good that Stefan put all that stuff out there. Some really great reading. So the type of patch that we didn't get in August that we normally get is what Microsoft calls an Uber patch, which is a comprehensive patch. So had August's patch been an Uber patch, it would have been cumulative for the product. But since it was component patches, then it was only cumulative for the component. So it gets sort of confusing. I get the feeling of we're going to bore you to tears talking about this for the next couple of months as we kind of get this figured out. Microsoft also had some monthly patches for Windows that caused some problems, caused some machines not to boot, some blue screens. They're definitely trying to do this whole agile software thing and develop things more quickly, having some problems. But I guess I'm okay with it. I mean, obviously, I wish there weren't problems, obviously, but it's growing pains, and I'm willing to suffer through it a little bit. I think getting quicker patches is better, and all that. So Jack in the chat room is saying that the Uber patch sounds like a made-up name. We've never heard of that before. I don't know. So back in 2009 or so, when they were doing the SharePoint 2010 Ignite training, I did some of that. And one of the sessions that I did was on patching. And I can tell you that back in 2009, internally, Microsoft was referring to this big patch as an Uber patch. And I don't know, when I did my patching session at SharePoint conference in 2010, I don't know if I called it the Uber patch or not, because honestly, the name Uber kind of bugs me a little bit. But it's been called the Uber patch forever. Whether people have actually said that out loud or whatever, it's always been called that. So Brian LaLancette says in the chat room, in quotes, "Wow, all these on-prem updates are tough to noodle. I think I'll move all my stuff to the clouds." I don't know that was intentional. I mean, I think obviously that's something to consider, but when you think about patching in the cloud, there have been just as many problems with SharePoint Online and SharePoint Online being patched and it breaking stuff or causing problems. So I don't think there's anything nefarious about this. I don't believe that this was done on purpose, nor do I necessarily believe that this is a good argument for going to online because it has its own set of patch problems. But I don't believe that. But anyway, as this comes out, as more people play with these patches, we'll learn more. But I did want to talk about that. Thanks to Stefan for that blog post. He and I also tweeted briefly last week a little bit about that. Now, Stefan is German, and so I was one of the things that I was talking about was me not liking the term Uber for the patch because Uber is the German word for over, which didn't seem to make a lot of sense. But he's actually German. German's actually his native tongue, and so when he said, "Yeah, it makes sense, we use the word that way," I pretty much didn't have a leg to stand on. So Uber patch it is. That's the way it goes. They are an Uber patch. Tech Rev Merrill was the first person to bring that up. What this is reminding anybody of the taxi service in the U.S. I guess all over the world now. There's a taxi service called Uber. I was first introduced to it down in Australia. Benjamin Nayland was a big fan of that, and he called it Uber taxis for us a couple times. Big fan of Uber taxis. So if you're going to be in another town or whatever, go out to Uber. And I don't remember if the URL is just uber.com or whatever, but it's a good alternative to traditional taxi services, and yeah, it's great stuff. Very high tech. They got an app where you can see where your driver's coming from. You pay in the app. You don't have to worry about tipping the driver or telling the driver you want to use a credit card and then his credit card reader not working when you get to your destination. None of that. It's all just big fan of Uber. But I guess I should have said Donka, Stefan, for the blog post. Finally, I see I'm running out of time here. Big exciting stuff going on in the Windows Phone world, and we talked about this a little bit last week about the Cyan rollout that's going out right now, and was talking to one of my coworkers today about all this, and I realized that I didn't link this last week. At least I don't think I did. Maybe not. And it is a link for those of us that have Nokia phones, and we are a bright bunch. This blog post that I linked on Nokia.com talks about where every phone in every model of phone in every country is when it comes to the Cyan update. And so, like, when I checked today, the 1020 was getting it, the 520 was getting it, my 520 over here, right here, this little fellow right here, but the 920 is not. And so you can tell if you're jonesing for the new Windows Phone 8.1 with the Cyan update, you can go to that blog post, and I will put that URL down here and see where you're at, see if you should be getting it or not. Now, for those of us who are on the developer preview, I mentioned this a little bit last week, but we'll go over it quick. You will not get the Cyan update automatically. That was always the plan, but there were some issues with BitLocker and some other things, and so developer preview phones at this point will not automatically get the Cyan update. Everything that I've read says at some point they will get that fixed. I'm too impatient for some point. So, like I said, my 920 will not get the update because it's just not rolled out yet, but my 520 can. And so what the process will be for me tomorrow, if I want the Cyan update, is I will back this phone up with the built-in backup software and get everything backed up. Most everything's in OneDrive, so it's not a huge deal. But I will back this phone up, and then I will download the Nokia app, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And it is the Restore Your Phone app. USB cable to your computer, run this app. It will blast Windows 8, or I've seen some things on the Twitterverse that it just blasts Cyan onto your phone, and then you're good to go, and then you restore your backup, and you're off to the races. Now, if you get Windows Phone 8 and not 8.1 when you do this, then you just do an update and you'll get Cyan because you're not running the developer preview anymore. And then as soon as you do that, you can load the developer preview back up and get all your stuff. So a lot of stuff out there. WP Central is a good place to read up on that. Win Superside, I think Paul's got some stuff. Though Paul's been on vacation the last couple of weeks, last month or so, so he might not have that. But there's no reason right now if you go to that Nokia page and your phone says it's available, that last column says it's available, there's no reason why you shouldn't have it. And let me know if you have any problems. That'd be great to hear some stories about that. Eric Harlan can't get it for his 1020, and those stories about him trying to get the update and then not working, they just make tears coming out of they do my heart well. I love to hear the stories about Eric Harlan failing with his phone. So if anybody else has any stories about Eric Harlan failing with his phone, by all means, let me know. But if you have stories about successes updating your phone or what you like best about Cyan, by all means, hit me up at Todd Klindt on Twitter, and we'll chat about it. All right, I think that is, we're running over as always, so we got to jump to the shameless self-promotion. Same shameless self-promotion as last week. I'm going to be doing SP TechCon here in a couple of weeks. That is September 16th through the 19th. That is in beautiful Boston. And I'll be doing a half-day session with Shane on Upgrade, a session on PowerShell, and just a session on admin tricks. So meet you out there. We're going to have a booth, things like that. By all means, if you're at SP TechCon, come on up and say hey. You know, we're going to have all that stuff going on. I would love to chat with you. By all means, come on up. And then September 29th and 30th, I will be in beautiful Stockholm, Sweden for the SharePoint Exchange Forum. I'll be doing my talk on Visual Studio load testing, and then another session on Upgrade. So again, if you're going to be out there, we'd love to talk to you. But that's all we've got for shameless self-promotion right now. So Lori in the chat room is asking about the status of the Netcast at SP TechCon. So that's an odd one because SP TechCon I think starts on Tuesday. Let me check my calendar. No. Yep, starts on Tuesday. I'll be there Monday night. I don't know where I'll be doing it. So we'll get back on that. Naomi's asking about the new Netcast name. We haven't talked about that in a while. I would like to rename the Netcast. I had a couple of names before. None of them really grabbed me. Something I should revisit. But but yeah, we'll be out there. I guess if you're going to be at SP TechCon and you want to get together, let me know and we'll figure it out. We'll do something. So Chris Mainland, that's a good question. He asks, does anybody know how to get the Netcast on the default Windows Phone podcast app? I think I got it on there somehow. Let me check mine and make sure, but it doesn't show up in the search, which kind of is a pain in the butt. So let me look if I do have it on there. If I have my own podcast on my phone. Yeah, so I've got it on there. And so you can kind of see it here. Now you're asking me how I got it on there, and I don't remember because I know that it doesn't show up in search. I need to look into that. And I would love to know who to talk to get that back in there. You can paste the RSS feed into the search. Well, that'll be fun. The guy at Microsoft that used to handle that was Rob Greenlee, and he's left Microsoft. But that was the guy that I talked to before about getting in there. But that's a good question, Chris. I'll chase that down for you. If you figure it out, Chris, let me know, and I'll give you a shout out next week, and we can talk about it. So, all right, everybody, I'm going to let you go. I can't wait to see who won in the Emmy, so I got to let you go so I can run upstairs and check all that out. But thanks to everybody who suffered through my video problems. Hopefully next week I'll have better luck with the video recording. We'll have some better stories there. But so next week is Labor Day. Holy cow, I almost forgot. So next week here in the U.S. is Labor Day, and I don't know if I'm going to be doing a Netcast or not. I need to figure out what my plans are. So keep up on the Twitter, and I will let you guys know. I will do kind of the same thing that I do normally about 5 o'clock Central Time, tweet out whether I'm going to have a Netcast or not, or I might blog it too. But again, Labor Day, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So, we'll keep in touch, but thanks to everybody. You've been a great audience. As always, you can email me, todd.klindt@rackspace.com or @ToddKlindt on Twitter. Ideas for the show, your favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe, whatever. I'm here for whatever. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night.